There you go, Catherine.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Catherine Conley. I'm the Community Relations and Engagement Coordinator here at Seniors NL. And welcome to this week's Talk About Mental Wellness as We Age. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker now in a few minutes. Sign language interpretation for our Let's Talk About sessions are supported by the Disability Policy Office, Department of Seniors, Youth and Social Development, to whom we are very grateful. Now, I'm going to just change my slide just to go over a few slight housekeeping tips. Please mute your mic to block out any outside noise. The closed captioning button is on the bottom of your screen. Please place your questions and comments in the chat. We will be monitoring this throughout the call. And of course, we will have time at the end for questions and answers as well. This session is being recorded. And if you have any presentation requests or topics of interest, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or one of my colleagues at Seniors NL to let us know what that topic is. Barb, can you please go ahead and read our land acknowledgement?
Good morning. We respectfully acknowledge the land on which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, whose culture has now been erased forever. We also acknowledge the island of Bukta Umbuk as the unceded traditional territory of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq. And we acknowledge Labrador as the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Innu, Nitassen, and the Inuit of Nunatsiavut, and the Inuit of Nunatuavut. We recognize all First Peoples who were here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As First Peoples have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the cultures, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. As we open our hearts and minds to the past, we commit ourselves to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all.
Thank you so much, Barb.
Welcome.
So now I have the pleasure of introducing Laura. So Laura, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen while I'm reading out your bio, so you can go ahead and start your screen and get your slides ready. There you go. Laura is a registered social worker with over 10 years experience working in the mental health and addictions field. Laura is currently in the role of Regional Mental Health Promotions Consultant with NL Health Services in the Central Zone. She lives in Grand Falls, Windsor with her husband, her 3-year-old daughter, and her 2 cats. Perfect, Laura. I can see your screen. You just need to start your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you for inviting me to facilitate this presentation on this very important topic. And thank you all for attending. Hopefully you find that there is some useful and interesting information here today. So we're going to be talking about mental wellness as we age. And some of the topics we're going to cover will be, what is mental wellness or mental health? And what does poor mental health look like versus mental illness? Because there are some similarities, but there are also some differences. And then we're going to look at some of the factors that can impact our mental wellness. And then we're going to get more into, what mental wellness, how mental wellness relates to healthy aging and how we can stay mentally well as we age. And finally, I'm going to end by sharing some of the resources, some mental health and also addictions resources that are free within our province to all residents. And of course, we'll have time for questions at the end. So I like this definition of mental wellness. It comes from the World Health Organization in 2012, but I think it's still very relevant today. And so according to the World Health Organization, mental wellness or mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So when we look at that definition, it doesn't really talk about mental illness, which is interesting because when I ask people, what do you know about mental wellness or mental health? And people often say depression, anxiety, and talk about mental illness. But sometimes we forget that there's more to mental health than the illness aspect. And we all have mental health, actually, and we all have a role to take care of our own mental health and, to also help other people as well. So some of the key components of the definition, we all have our own strengths, our own abilities, and mental health is about using these things throughout our lives to make the most of life. It's being able to cope with normal everyday stresses that we all face, right? It might be financial stressors, with everything being so expensive these days. It might be relationship stressors, work-related stressors, things like that. So it's being able to cope and manage that stuff in a healthy way. Working productively, whether it's employed work or volunteer work or some other contribution that you made to your community. So it's being involved. And when we look at positive mental health, we're looking at a high level of well-being or functioning. So this is what we all strive for and hopefully experience for the most part. And so people who experience positive mental health or wellness, they will be flexible in their thinking, able to adapt to changes, resilient, so overcoming difficult times and learning from those experiences, an optimistic or positive outlook on life generally, having courage, balance. So often we hear about work-life balance, but just a general balance in life, have effective interpersonal skills. So knowing how to communicate, listen, get along with other people generally, and perseverance. So not giving up very easily. And when we look at poor mental health, this is different from mental illness. We all experience poor mental health from time to time. Maybe there's a stressful event that we encounter that has an impact on our mental wellness. So, we might lose interest in some of the things that we typically enjoy. We may stop doing activities that we enjoy. We might just feel generally unwell, and that can be physical, that can be aches and pains, that can be, emotionally, feeling sad or blue or anxious. It could be that you're agitated or restless or have trouble thinking and concentrating, or changes in your sleep and appetite so that you're sleeping more or less, you're eating more or less, and isolation from other people. And, these tend to be some signs and symptoms of stress, when stress gets to us and when our mental health declines. And it's not necessarily the same as a mental illness, but can certainly be similar to signs and symptoms of a mental illness, and can go there, can end up there if we don't take care of our mental health, if we don't address these concerns. And just to give a few more examples, some of the physical signs that maybe we're not doing so well mentally, we might feel that we have a racing heart, or we might notice that our blood pressure is up or our blood sugars are up, not related to what we're eating. We might notice muscle tension, sore muscles, or feel stiff. We might be sweating more than usual, experience upset stomach or nausea, headaches, feeling unwell, as I mentioned already. Behavioral signs, I mentioned changes in eating and sleeping patterns, spending more time alone, right? Not reaching out to others for support. And some of us might pick up smoking or vaping, drinking, or using drugs in order to cope, to feel better. Or if we do some of those things already, it might be increasing substance usage as a way of trying to cope. So stress, stressful events can also impact our cognitive functioning, the way we think. So we might have more difficulty concentrating, making decisions. Our mind might be racing, or the mind might go blank. We might have some trouble with memory or have negative thinking, just a pessimistic view about life and things in general. And emotionally, of course, you might feel nervous, you might feel anxious, impatient, short-tempered or angry, sad or blue, and not having an interest in things that were once enjoyed. And so people may experience some of these symptoms. It really depends on the individual. So one of the differences, I guess the difference with mental illness, a lot of the signs and symptoms may be similar to those that I just described, but it's characterized by alteration in thinking, mood, and behavior. And here's the key component. It's associated with significant distress and impaired functioning. So this is something, when these signs and symptoms become so significant, they're impacting our daily life. Maybe we're having trouble getting up out of bed in the morning, getting showered, getting dressed, things that generally, maybe generally we're able to do without too much effort. So those type of changes. And especially if these changes are long lasting. So it's not just for a few days or a few weeks, it's, going on, lasting for several weeks, several months, getting worse instead of better. So those are all signs that maybe a person is dealing with a mental illness. And for a long time, the statistic has been that in any given year, about 1 in 5 Canadians will experience a mental illness. And this statistic increased a little bit during the pandemic. Of course, people experienced a lot of stress during the height of COVID. And, people's mental health is not, overall, not what it was before the pandemic. We're still impacted by all that happened, from illness and losses to, financial stressors and those type of things. And just some other interesting statistics I found. The percentage of the population over age 65 in Canada who experience a mental health problem back in 2006 was about 13%. By 2026, so just 3 years from now, or closer to 2 years from now, I guess, is expected to increase up to 22%. So that would almost be 1 in 4 individuals age 65 and older experiencing mental health problems. So, and it doesn't discriminate, right? It doesn't, age, gender, ethnicity, all of that stuff. I mean, it could happen, any one of us can experience mental illness at any point in life, really. And another thing is mental illness affects twice as many people as diabetes and 4 times as many people as cancer. I thought that was an interesting statistic because we often hear people talk about diabetes, cancer. Unfortunately, those diseases are very, I think, very common. And we probably all know someone or may personally be experienced, have diabetes or cancer, or, gone through cancer, but we don't talk as much about mental illness, right? There's a bit more of a stigma to it, but yet it's even more common than these diseases. So why are we not talking about it more? So I'm really glad that, we have this opportunity to talk about it today. And just to illustrate again, the difference between maybe poor mental health and mental illness. When we experience, I'll say a normal sadness or typical sadness that maybe follows a stressful event, maybe the loss of a loved one, of course, you're going to feel sad for a period of time. You're going to go through the grieving process. Major depression, however, may not necessarily follow a stressful event. It may have no clear cause. Normal sadness, it says here it starts to improve within 2 weeks. I think that depends on the stressor, but again, it's not very long lasting generally, depending on the situation. Major depression lasts for more than 2 consecutive months, and it's getting worse. The mood is getting worse instead of better. Normal sadness, it can live with periods of activities or social interaction. Maybe if you're going through a stressful time, you're not feeling the best, you're feeling sad, a friend invites you out to play cards or go out for coffee or go for a walk. those type of things can help you feel a little bit better. With major depression, if the individual even has the energy, the motivation, the interest to go out and do those things, it can still be very challenging and not really make a difference in their overall mood. It doesn't cure the depression because there are changes in brain chemicals. And finally, I'll say that with a normal sadness, usually after a short period of time, we're able to kind of get back into some of our routines and daily activities, getting up, showering, preparing meals, maybe going out socializing. But with major depression, even these type of things, our daily routines, can be very difficult to engage in without proper treatment. And I like this mental health quadrant model because it shows us that mental health is not just mental illness or no mental illness. There's a bit of a continuum. We can fall in any one of these 4 quadrants at different times in our life. So for example, we all strive to be in the upper right quadrant, the green one, no mental illness and also experiencing positive mental health. So that's ideally where we want to be. But of course, there's going to be times when, maybe we have no mental illness, so the bottom right quadrant, the blue, but we might be experiencing low mental well-being because of a stressor that we're going through. And on the left side, we have individuals who are experiencing a high degree of mental illness, but even here, the degree of the mental illness can fluctuate. So someone may experience a high degree of mental illness and they may have very low mental well-being, right? They may need to see a physician, they may present at the emergency department, they may require an inpatient admission, medication, or some form of treatment. And then they can move into the upper left quadrant, right, where they still have a mental illness. So, with schizophrenia, for example, it's very common for people to, have that diagnosis for a lifetime, maybe require medication, follow up with psychiatry, but they can still experience positive mental health, where they're feeling good, where they're involved in life, socializing, working, and experiencing recovery. So that's the view we try to take of mental health now. And so even though mental illness or poor mental health can affect any of us at any time in life, there are some risk factors that, can increase the risk of someone developing a mental illness or struggling with mental health problems. So when we lose a loved one, so when we're dealing with bereavement or losses in a social network, so that can even result from, maybe we're moving or we have loved ones, friends, family who move away. And so we lose that social connection a little bit. That can certainly negatively impact our mental health. Chronic health problems, which unfortunately things, cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, may become more common as we age and can really obviously impact our physical health, but also our mental health, right? It can be very stressful. We can get very down, when we're struggling with these things. And individuals who've had a history of mental illness, so previous experience with mental illness, unfortunately increases the risk that that individual will experience mental illness at another point in their lifetime. And they may not, right? These are just risk factors. And, resiliency plays a role here as well. People who are resilient, tend to cope better with maybe losses or chronic health problems, those type of things. And there's certainly protective factors as well that may prevent us from experiencing mental illness. So when we maintain our social connections with friends, with family, acquaintances, or when we get out there and form new social connections with people, that can certainly protect our mental health. Social connections that'll come up a few times in this presentation because it's very, very important for our mental health to have those connections. And it's not always easy, right? Especially when people move away. It might require the use of some technology, like Zoom or FaceTime to keep in touch with people. And I know it's not the same as face-to-face interactions, but it is something that helps. And, many of us experienced during the pandemic when we had to stay in our bubbles, that those type of technologies probably help with our social connections and our mental health, maybe a little bit easier, the isolation. Being physically active, again, very important. It'll come up many times. It's just as important for our mental health as it is for our physical health. Being physically active, and it doesn't mean you don't have to run a marathon. It's whatever your interests, abilities are. So, walking, it could be paddling a kayak, it could be yoga. There's so many different ways to move, right? Going out into the woods, anything that's moving your body releases some brain chemicals that can really help you feel better mentally. Having a sense of purpose, of course, we all need to have a reason to get up each day, whether it's looking after, children, grandchildren, pets, plants, going to work, volunteering, going out for coffee with friends, having hobbies, things like that. And then there's always new medications and technologies coming out. I already talked about Zoom and people getting more and more used to using that, especially since the pandemic. But these things can really help us to, live longer, healthier lives, not just physically, but mentally, staying in touch with people, new medications, new medical equipment, those type of things can really make a difference, not only for our physical health, but our mental health. And some other protective factors, just belonging to some sort of group, whether it's a church group or, maybe you're involved in a 50+ club. Those type of things can be protective factors and help keep us mentally well. So when it comes to mental wellness and healthy aging, some things to consider are, of course, as we grow older, it's something that we're all going through. And, a lot of us, maybe we worry about that. There's certainly positive aspects, but there are some things that may be stressful or concerning as well. There can be many changes, of course, physical changes we go through, our appearance changes, maybe our health changes, maybe we lose some of our strength. And also some mental changes too, where, our memory may not be what it once was, different things like that. And while a lot of these changes are normal, they can be difficult to deal with. I know personally, I don't like any kind of change, even positive change, tends to impact my mental health just a little bit, right? So we know that coping with change can be difficult, more so for some people than others. But mental health problems are not a normal part of the aging process. And sometimes people think it is. Sometimes people think that the problems they're having cognitively, with their memory, with their thinking, or even physical aches and pains, or, lower moods, or more worries are a normal part of aging. But if these are concerns and they're having a negative impact on your life, it's not normal, right? Their difficulties with mood, thinking, and behavior are often signs that, something might be wrong mentally. And so, seeing your family doctor, if you have one, or, some physician, nurse practitioner, and getting that checked out is very important to figure out, what is going on, and do I need some treatment, or what do I need to do about that? So how can we stay mentally well as we age? So I look at this picture here and I think these are two very mentally well, probably physically well people as well. They look like they're happy, they look like they're physically fit, they're active. So how can we be like these people here? I'm sure you all have different strategies that you practice. I'm just going to go over a few different things here now. So, back to the coping with change and how that can be very challenging. So it's important to plan for change when we can. So if we know that maybe we have a birthday coming up that we're not so excited about, or a move coming up, whether it's ourselves or someone else, or retirement coming up, even if it's a positive thing, it's important to prepare for that as best you can. And, sorry, using sources of social support can be helpful. So, reaching out to family and friends, letting them know what's going on, talking through any concerns with them, spending time with them, and just spending time on self-care in general, right? So if you have maybe a stressful change coming up, you can certainly focus on eating well, being physically active, socializing, getting enough rest, different things like that, doing hobbies and things you enjoy that are going to put you in a good place for coping with that change and help you cope through it. So again, using your strengths, we all have strengths and we all have some healthy coping strategies, I'm sure, that we developed over time, including some of those things I just mentioned. And accepting reality, which can be difficult, right? Sometimes we don't want to face the reality of things that may be happening. We might not want to face the reality that our vision is worsening and maybe we need to get some stronger prescription glasses, things like that. But we're always better off when we find a way to accept the reality. So retirement may be something that's relevant to some of you. You may be recently retired, you may have retirement coming up, you may be very excited about it. You may also have some concerns. It's certainly a big change. Especially if you're in a certain workplace for a long period of time, you form bonds with coworkers. It's also a big part of your life. I know I get up to come into work and this is a big part of my day. And I think I'd be a little lost and not really sure what to do with myself if I were to retire now. So that's why, again, it's important to maybe plan ahead. It can be thinking about, what abilities and skills that you've gained through your work and your strengths, and how can you use those with something else, right? Whether it's volunteering, whether it's a hobby, something else that you can do to give yourself a sense of purpose. Traveling, that's my plan if I can afford it. I want to travel as much as I can. And, for some people that is a big part of their retirement plan. For other people, they may not be interested in traveling, or it may not be financially feasible. And maybe it's traveling around the province, right? It can be near or far. And certainly spending time on hobbies, getting new hobbies. So maybe it's things that you already do and enjoy. Maybe you've always wanted to learn how to knit. Maybe you've always wanted to join a book club. Maybe you wanted to learn photography, right? So it's a good time to try out some of those things to give yourself, to keep yourself busy and give your life some meaning to help you through that transition into retirement. Physical changes, we all know that our bodies, our minds, everything changes physically as we age. Some of it we can see, some of it we can feel. And so just reminding ourselves that this is a lot of these changes are a normal parts of aging, right? And as I mentioned earlier, getting the eyeglasses that you need, seeing your doctor. I know a lot of people, like my father, he avoids seeing doctors at all costs. And I know that, he has some reasons, and people may have had negative experiences, or just having to go and wait if you're going to the emergency department for hours is something we want to avoid. But it's also very important, not only through physical health, but mental health, to take care of these medical things and being aware of the medications you take. what they are, their purpose, side effects, drug interactions to be aware of, those type of things. So bereavement following the loss of a loved one, unfortunately, is a common experience, something we all go through, and it becomes more common as we age and we lose more people, and can certainly have a negative impact on our mental health. Most people do not experience mental illness as a result of bereavement. Most people, do experience the grief with the many different emotions and sadness and anger and guilt and, loneliness, all of these things, but they're considered a normal part of the grieving process. So it's very important to not deny those feelings, to not try to always distract for them or to kind of stuff them down deep inside. As uncomfortable as it may be, we need to feel and we need to express and we need to process all the emotions that do come with grief. And it can be very helpful to remember and talk about your loved one who you've lost. I know a lot of people will do that. With Christmas coming up, holidays, special events, anniversaries can be a more difficult time when you've lost a loved one, but it's also a great time to really remember and talk about that person. I know when my grandmother was alive, she always had her children, her grandchildren at her house for a turkey dinner on Christmas Day. And when she passed away, I said, we have to carry on this family tradition. So I don't actually live in the community, so it became my aunt and my uncle's house. They took that on. And so we still came together and we remembered past Christmases with my grandmother and, shared funny stories and that sort of thing. So, and you may feel that there's a sadness and missing the person, of course, but also you can feel happy as you talk about them and remember them. And you may need to look to family and friends for support, especially during difficult times like holidays, right? You don't want to be alone. You want to talk about how you're feeling, or at least, spending time with other people. And if you know someone who's lost a loved one, please, be supportive of them, check in on them, ask them how they're doing, or ask them out for coffee, or things like that. So now we're going to talk about some effective stress management strategies. As I mentioned early on, stress can, even though stress is a normal part of life, stress can lead to poor mental health, can lead to mental illness if it goes on and we're not able to find healthy ways to cope. And again, I'm sure you've all developed some positive stress management strategies at this point in life. It's also important that we focus on using the positive strategies more so than the negative. It can be sometimes easier to go to the negative. For me, it's, I say I stress eat, I might go and pick up fast food instead of having to take the time to prepare a healthy meal. And while that's okay from time to time, I mean, nobody's perfect. If it becomes a daily routine, it can certainly impact your health, right? Same thing with, if we're smoking more, drinking more, using substances in order to cope, gambling or shopping too much, those things can negatively impact our lives. So we want to focus on the positive ways of managing stress as much as possible. So again, I'll mention the eating healthy foods, and we all know we're supposed to follow Canada's food diet and eat healthy foods. Of course, it's easier said than done. And we know that eating healthy is important for our physical health, right? Maybe to reduce risk of heart disease or to keep our cholesterol down or, those type of things. But it's also very important for our mental health. In fact, if we eat too many processed foods, refined sugars, that can really negatively impact our mood and how we feel. So if we eat more whole foods, real foods that haven't gone through a lot of the whole processing, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, fish, meat, beans, those type of things, nuts, then that can actually provide us with a more stable mood. So it's kind of like you eat these things maybe to have stable blood sugar. Well, it's a similar type of thing with your mood. And can also help improve focus and energy. And most of us probably can certainly use more energy, right? Now, of course, I recognize that cost can be a barrier to eating some of these healthy foods. I mean, any food these days is very expensive, it seems. And so, I mean, I could do a whole presentation on this topic alone, but I won't. I've learned from my dietitian coworker, though, there's so many different tips and things that we can do to try to make healthy eating more, I guess, feasible option. So it could be things like purchasing canned or frozen fruits, vegetables, those type of things. It might be, growing your own vegetables. I know that we have an apple tree, and so we really lucked out there. So in the fall, we didn't have to buy apples, right? We just used them from our tree, and we made applesauce as well, and different things that we can kind of put away and use during the winter. Or, you may be in a community where you can go to the community garden, plant some things, avail of the things that are grown there. Or maybe you like to go out berry picking, right? Or know someone who does. I know my mom keeps me supplied in blueberries. So that's always great and saves a lot of money. Some people like to go hunting or fishing, or they, have family or friends who do these things and can, keep you with a good supply of moose or codfish or, whatever it is. So those things can certainly help as well. And if you want to eat healthier, small change is probably the best way to go, something that's small and easy to do. So it might be just, I'm going to eat one piece of fruit today. I'm going to add in one piece of fruit. So just simple things like that can make a difference. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming overhaul of your current diet. And here's exercise again. As I said, any type of physical movement activity is great for you, and you're never too old to exercise. I know that there's various, in my community and other communities, I've heard of various exercise classes specifically for seniors. And I'm sure a lot of those folks can do more than I can do. Yeah, and it's about finding what's right for you. I have a couple of knee injuries, and for a while that really stopped me from doing physical activity. I was so frustrated because I couldn't do the high impact activities that I had once enjoyed. But I'm learning that it's about adjusting, right? Change I don't like. So it's maybe trying out new activities. I need to exercise in a pool, like a aquafit aerobics type thing, or swimming even. Bike riding is low impact. So it's kind of figuring out what is safe for you to do, and also what you enjoy. And physical activity can really, help to kind of give you that energy, or it can also help you to calm down, right? If you're angry, if you're stressed, if you're frustrated, it can be a good release, depending on the activities that you do. And again, trying to do something every day or a few times a week is ideal. I know that there can be barriers. So maybe it's problem solving, or, finding an exercise buddy. That can be a solution for some people in order to get a bit more physical activity in, because most of us do need more, myself included. And getting adequate sleep and rest is very important, again, for our physical health, also our mental health and well-being. We all know what it's like to have a bad night sleeping, not getting much sleep, or a few nights. And it can certainly take a toll on your mental health and overall health and well-being. So it's very important to try to find ways to get a good night's sleep. And again, I know this can be very challenging for some people. And, some individuals there's certain tips that I'll suggest now, but some individuals will need a melatonin sleep aid or need to talk to a physician or nurse practitioner about medications to help us sleep, even for a short period of time. So there's all kinds of different options, but I definitely suggest starting off with simple things like making sure you have a sleep routine. I became very familiar with the sleep routine after my daughter was born. She's 3 years old now, and pretty much since she was an infant, we've developed a sleep routine for her. So around the same time each evening, she knows that we're going to go and brush our teeth, maybe get a bath, clean up, get ready for bed, put on pajamas. Then we're going to read some books. Then we're going to turn off the lights or turn down the lights and listen to some relaxing music. There's a certain song she likes to hear over and over and over again, but it is relaxing and it helps her sleep. So that's what we do. And of course, we're making sure that the room is dark enough, that she has her comfortable pillow or comfortable blanket. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. All of those type of things are important, and they're just as important for us as they are for children and toddlers. Yet a lot of us, we don't really follow a good sleep routine. I know that I could do better with it. And electronics are a huge problem for a lot of people and make a huge impact. So it's actually recommended putting away electronic devices, turning off screens, whether it's TVs, tablets, laptops, cell phones, at least in half an hour to an hour before you want to get ready for bed. So it's part of that winding down process. So if this is not something you do, I really encourage you to maybe give it a try, especially if you're having sleep difficulties. Maybe it can be you turn down the lights and you're listening to relaxing music, like my daughter, or reading a book. Maybe it's you have a light snack, and you want to be careful about sugar, too much grease and sugar, of course, and caffeine as well. Some people are more sensitive than others to it, but I certainly try to avoid after probably 3 p.m. I won't have any caffeinated coffee. Got to be careful with some teas as well, right? Pop, colas, caffeine, chocolate. So just being aware of those things, and also being aware of the effects of alcohol on sleep can actually be detrimental. Now, some people do enjoy a glass or two, a drink or two of an alcoholic beverage to help them relax and unwind in the evening, and that may not be a problem for people. But too much alcohol certainly is not great for health. Again, that could be a whole other presentation I do. But if we have so much that or depend on it to help us relax or to fall asleep, it's probably an unhealthy thing and could interfere with the quality of our sleep. We may not be waking up as rested. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. So learning a new skill can also be something, again, that can give us purpose, enjoyment in life, can be fun, it can also challenge our minds, right? When we're trying to learn something new. And some people do different brain exercises and, Sudoku or puzzle, different things like that to keep their mind stimulated. So that's a part of it as well, right? So I want you all to, just take a minute to think and maybe think about it more after this session. What's something new that I've always wanted to learn that I haven't got around to learning? Maybe you haven't had time, or it didn't seem important. Maybe now you have some more time in your life. It might be a good opportunity to try out something new, right? Whether it's photography, like in the picture there, maybe you want to learn how to bake a cheesecake. Maybe you want to learn how to knit or crochet, woodworking, painting, there's so many different things. And so the next few slides, I just want to talk about some of the mental health resources that are available for free to everyone within our province. Some of them you may be familiar with, but if not, here we go. So we basically have 3 main points of access to our mental health and addictions system here in the province for services. So for the last few years, we've been promoting Bridge the Gap, the government's website. It's basically the government's website with information, programs, service information, all related to mental health and addictions. It's free, you know, everything on there is confidential. It's stuff you can do from your own home. So if you're looking for more information on mental health or substance use topics, if you want to know, do I have a drinking problem? Do I have a gambling problem? Am I depressed? There's a self-assessment that can be done and really just takes a couple of minutes. It's through checkitoutnl.ca, but you can find it for Bridge the Gap as well. And it's for adults age 18 plus. So there's a general mental wellness screener, depression, anxiety, gambling, various, you know, addictions, issues. And it's not a diagnosis, but it can give you an idea of, you know, whether or not you're experiencing some problems in those areas and might need some further support or help. There's also apps that you can access through there, you know, things that will teach you how to get a good night's sleep or how to breathe deeply, or mindfulness. The Mind Well program through here is really great because it offers, you know, some online classes on mindfulness as well as movement, finances. There's a video library. There's training for healthcare workers as well, if you work in that field, just how to decrease stress and exhaustion. And there's a Take 5 Daily program. So it's a 30-day online mindfulness where you spend 5 minutes a day. And, you know, mindfulness has been shown to, and this specific program, Mind Well, which you can find through Bridge the Gap and sign up for free that way. It's found to help people improve their mental health, or 96% of people who completed the program reported improved mental health. 96% also reported stress reduction, and 95% of people who completed the Mind Well Take 5 Daily challenge reported improved focus. So, you know, that's huge, right? And it's stuff that can help any one of us, you know, whether we're experiencing mental health problems, mental illness, or, you know, we're feeling like we're pretty good mentally. It's good information to have, certainly. And Bridge the Gap can also tell you, you know, like, where are the mental health and addictions offices in my area? What's the phone number for them? What services and resources are there? And it's divided by youth content and adult content, and by province. So make sure you go to Newfoundland and Labrador. It's easy to find. It's a fairly easy to navigate website. And also by region, right? So Eastern, Central, Western, Labrador. So you can go into your own region and find resources that are relevant to you. Another point of access for those who are interested in speaking with a professional counselor. We do have the Doorways program across the province in various locations, various mental health and addictions offices. And we also call it our single session or same day walking counseling service. So you might be able to, and you can find the Doorways locations either on Bridge the Gap or by calling the helpline 811 to find out the nearest location. You can also look at the Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services website. So there's lots of ways to figure it out. You can just call or show up at your local mental health and addictions office if you know where that is and have the number. And, you know, in some places you can walk in some places you call, say the morning of, to make a same day kind of appointment to speak with a clinician. And really there's no triage or screening process. There's no wait list. It's free. And you get about 50 minutes or so to address a concern that you may have, you know. And so people come in for all kinds of reasons. People might come in because they're stressed at their workplace, or they're dealing with going through separation or divorce. You know, they're grieving the loss of a loved one. They might have concerns about their children or other family members, having difficulty coping with stress in general. So some people like to come in and kind of, you know, vent and just have someone who's non-judgmental and supportive, who can listen and really validate their feelings. Some people are looking to learn some coping strategies, so it really is tailored to each individual what you want. And some people will even come in and realize, you know what, maybe I'm dealing with depression or anxiety, and I need some ongoing counseling. And, we can help set people up with that sort of support through the Doorways program. And that would be our mental health and addictions community teams located across the province. So the outpatient counseling, which is again open to all ages. A lot of people will go through their family doctor who might refer them. I say the quickest and easiest way to do this, if you're able, is to call directly. And again, depending on where you live in the province, there might be a certain triage or an intake line to call. Like I know in central Newfoundland, for all of the central zone, we have a one triage number that people call, answer questions, give some information about themselves. And then they're either put on a wait list for services or given an appointment to the counselor. So, it depends. There can be a wait list for these services, depending on how many people are looking for the services at any particular time, and it varies by region. So it's hard to say, but you can certainly call and get the information, or if you prefer, you can have a doctor or a social worker, some other health professional fill out the paper referral form, and someone will call you and get back to you. And again, this is for, we see people for all kinds of things. We have social workers, occupational therapists, psychologists, mental health nurses attached to these teams in the community to provide counseling and assessments. Anxiety and depression is very common, substance use and gambling concerns, separation, divorce, different relationship issues that people are dealing with, adjustment to illness. There is really no right or wrong reason to call, and we'll certainly, if it's not a mental health or substance use related concern, if it's something else, even housing or financial, we tend to help people with those things and help connect with appropriate resources as well. And here are some good phone numbers to have. If you have 811, you're probably, all set. I say, when in doubt, call 811, our health line, of course, where you'll speak with a nurse usually, who can help with various things. So they can also do the referrals and connect you to mental health and addiction services through the health line. You can also speak with a dietitian, a nurse practitioner. You can find out how to get a naloxone kit. That would be the medication that's used to reverse opioid overdose. We're getting a lot of requests for those. And also, if you're experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call 811, and that's our free provincial confidential crisis line that's available, 24/7, where you can talk to a trained crisis responder who's typically a nurse. For those people who are deaf or hard of hearing, you can also download the 811 Healthline app, and through that app, there is a text option for the crisis line. There's also a text number, not to make this confusing, but for those who prefer text, there is a crisis text line. And for adults, you text the word wellness to the number 741-741. And that information is also available on the Bridge the Gap website. Or if you call the Healthline 811, I'm sure that they can also direct you, give you the appropriate information. And that's also available 24/7 for crisis support. So no one ever has to deal with any, mental health concerns alone. There's always support. There's always someone available by phone, by text, by online chat, whatever you're comfortable with. And just a couple more numbers here that I want to give you. The First Nations and Inuit Hope for Wellness Helpline. So that's available to Indigenous people all across Canada, where you're ensured to get, free, confidential, culturally competent crisis intervention and counseling support available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They also have a website. You can search them, find out what information they have. They have an online chat on there. And services are available in various languages. So there's English, there's French, there's Cree, there's Inuktitut. Sorry if I said that incorrectly, and Ojibwe. So, that may be a great option for Indigenous folk, especially when you're in more rural or remote communities, and there may not be a lot of in-person services there. And when you're looking for mental health or addictions information, maybe you're looking for a service. I know sometimes people call me and they're looking, what services are available, what's most appropriate for me or my loved one. And certainly I take those calls and try to help people, but we do have a mental health and addictions system navigator for our province. His name is Barry Hewitt, and his phone number and email address are here on the slide. So he's a great person to contact when you're trying to navigate the system, because we know these things can be challenging at times, right? Which number do I call? Where do I go? And finally, I'm going to mention another really great warm line, the LifeWise warm line. So LifeWise was formerly known as Channel, and it's our province's peer support service. And so they have a Facebook page. I think they have a website. They are available across the province. They have virtual online peer support groups. And so it's basically run by and for people who have lived experience, who had, mental illness, mental health struggles, and are now trained peer supporters and are there to help others. So when you call this warm line, again, from anywhere in the province, it's free, it's confidential. You just might be having a bad day or stressed out or feeling lonely and want to chat with someone. And maybe someone who has experienced the same sort of things and can be very understanding and supportive. Can be really great when I know sometimes people say, I'm going through a lot, but I don't want to put that on my family or friends. I don't feel comfortable sharing all of that with them. They might judge me. So these type of services, helplines can be really great for that, right? For getting support. And the LifeWise Warm line is available daily from 10 a.m. until midnight. So I know that was a lot of information. But I'm going to end my presentation there and leave the rest of the time for some questions.
Thank you so much, Laura. There was so much information there and a lot of resources at the end, which I do have a slide too that I will certainly share later on. It just has some of the information there for resources, contact numbers for people. So you can go ahead whenever you're ready, Laura, and you can actually stop sharing and then I'll actually share my screen. But please, everybody, if you have any questions, comments, take yourself off mute. This is time for questions and answers, comments, concerns.
Or I'm sure you can write in the chat box if you're more comfortable with that than speaking up.
Exactly. And I think my colleagues there, Sherry, Barb, can you just have a quick look at the chat there? Because I did see a couple of questions there coming in through, or comments. And I do have some questions as well that were asked during registration. And I'll actually start going down through some of those questions now in a moment as well.
I was putting up my hand. I was going to speak. Laura, thank you for your wonderful presentation. I just loved it.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks a lot.
Laura, is 811 available here in Grand Falls, Windsor?
Yes, it is.
Is it available in Bayvert?
Yes, it is.
Is it available in Conn River?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you so much.
And everywhere else in between.
What, everywhere in the province?
Yeah, actually everywhere in the province.
Labrador as well?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Yeah. Now I can't speak for what the process looks like. I mean, I have called 811 to, talk to a nurse and say, well, my daughter has a fever. What should I do? Should I bring her to the hospital? Like those type of medical things. I haven't tried out some of the other services, like getting a nurse practitioner appointment or speaking with a dietitian or anything like that. So I can't really speak to, how it all works but I know that those things are available as well as the crisis line and just, helping direct people to appropriate services in the province.
Laura, one thing I think as a senior, there might be one gap that wasn't mentioned, and that's legal services.
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
how about a senior's in a situation where a caregiver or a family member is taking financial advantage of them? What is available?
Yeah. So yeah, and there's just so many different services. So I was trying to narrow it down to like mental health, addiction specific, but I know that of course, people, like as I said, people might come into mental health and addiction services because of housing or financial difficulties. And certainly, maybe elder abuse or being taken advantage of by individuals. So I mean, it all kind of overlaps, and our role is to connect people with appropriate services. So I mean, there's certainly, and I would have to look up the contact information. I'm not quite sure what the number is to call right now, but
Well, the Journey Project is one, Laura,
yeah, the Journey Project.
is one, because that would take care of seniors who are being abused in any way by a caregiver or a spouse or sexually assaulted. That's one I know of, the Journey Project, free of charge.
Yeah, and
I'd just like to interject a little bit in there as well. If there is anybody that is looking for support and information with regards to elder abuse, whether that be financially or physically, you can always call us at Seniors NL. We have all of the contact information here and also the numbers to call for the Adult Protection Act. So that would make it a lot easier. Exactly. And that includes the Journey Project.
Similar with child abuse, it is required by law that it get reported to a social worker who works for Children and Family Services, but there's also an Adult Protection Act and social workers who investigate allegations of abuse, neglect, and things like that, specifically for seniors. I also want to mention there's the Public Legal Information Association of Newfoundland and Labrador, or PLIAN, PLIAN, and they have a website. They're situated in St. John's, but they are province-wide, so they can provide a lot of free legal information, advice, and help out with anything that could be a legal issue, really, right? In different types of areas. So that's a really great service as well.
I do want to point out as well that Trudy here at Seniors NL is placing some information in the chat there. So she has placed the Adult Protection Act toll-free number there.
Oh, thanks so much.
Trudy, if you'd be so kind, if you could place PLIAN's number there in the chat, that would be phenomenal as well. Thank you.
Yeah, very important services to know about for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much for that question. Great question. Anybody else have a comment or concern? I can certainly read out one that was done during registration. So first question during registration, how can people help? I'm sorry, let me do that again. How can we help people who find that they are slowing down and becoming more forgetful as they age, not see this as a weakness?
Yeah, so I mean, again, depending on the severity of it, it can be part of the normal aging process. Certainly someone could go and get a medical checkup exam if they are concerned or need some reassurance whether this is normal or requires some medical intervention. But yeah, certainly it's again, we go through all of these changes, and just to kind of normalize it and not looking at things as a weakness, right? To just kind of, I guess, accepting the reality of some of the changes that are going to happen. And, you know, as long as it's not something that's interfering with your daily functioning in life, you're still able to, you know, feel pretty good and healthy and enjoying life. It doesn't have to be a big concern, right? Oh,
Thank-
someone wants to.
Another hard question, is there any special line or special services for homelessness with seniors right now?
I'm not sure about seniors. There is a general. Just have this card in front of me. There is an emergency housing line that we typically provide to individuals here in Central who might come in and are looking for that emergency housing.
I'm going to add a little bit of information there as well. Again, that if you have information or if there's anybody on the call that is currently dealing with seniors homelessness, please reach out to Seniors NL. We have several numbers right across the province. We have colleagues here in the office that are working with other organizations, provincial organizations, helping seniors in this type of a situation. So again, please call Seniors NL, and I will have our number on the screen at the end of the presentation. So everybody can certainly write down that number, give us a call, send us an email. We are here to provide all this information.
Would you like me to add the emergency housing line phone number in the chat? It is a provincial line.
Yes, please.
Okay. On that right now. Emergency housing line.
Thank you so much for being equipped to answer all these hard questions. You know, I really believe that homelessness is a part of mental health, right? It's very
Yes.
connected.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I didn't really get into it in this presentation, but you know, maybe I should have that these determinants of health, right? Things like housing, even, you know, food security, education, employment, all of these things really impact their mental health. So, you know, unfortunately, some people are at a disadvantage if they grow up, you know, in poverty, if they don't have, you know, safe, affordable housing, if they don't have food security. Those individuals, through no fault of their own, are going to be at a disadvantage that, you know, when it comes to physical health, mental health, and all kinds of things in life. So we really do have to look beyond the individual as well. And I think a huge part of addressing mental health and addictions concerns is really addressing those system factors, you know, those bigger issues, right? It comes down to that. We certainly see a lot less mental health and addictions issues if everybody had, you know, had appropriate housing, if everyone had enough food, if everyone, you know, had other supports, services. Yeah.
To add to that as well, Seniors NL, if you are looking for a seniors housing transition guide that will help you think about questions to consider if you are thinking about downsizing, reach out to us. We do have that guide that we can either email it to you or physically mail it to your address. We have the housing lists right across the province, personal care home, long-term care home lists, food banks. So if there's anything at all that you are looking for, that's what we're here for. I'm going to say this again now in a moment as well as we're closing, but next Wednesday, we are going to be hosting a Zoom session called Just Ask Seniors NL Anything. And this gives the opportunity for everybody on the call, everybody across the province to ask the questions such as this or get into other questions that might be on your mind. And it will be a recorded session. We will have the director of the information referral, Elizabeth, will be our guest speaker. Of course, all of us here at Seniors NL will be on the call as well. So I will give information. The invite for that presentation will be sent out later on this morning. That invitation for next week will be sent out.
Yeah, and I see some of in the chat box here relating to kind of what I was just saying as well about you know, the relationship between stress and living in poverty or living in rural and remote areas where there may not be so many services. You know, so maybe there could be increased access to healthy food or exercise programs, especially in the winter. Certainly those things can impact someone's mental health, and you know, it might require being really creative and starting up your own walking group, right? If you're in one of those areas where those things don't exist or you don't have a gym. And but yeah, you know, certainly the food issue, food security is a huge issue, and I don't know, it's kind of hard to, yeah, I mean, food and healthy eating is a whole big topic on its own. Unfortunately, we know the importance of eating healthy. I can encourage you all to do that. Doing so, we know also can come with some challenges, right? So it might require some reaching out to different services, trying to problem solve, figure out solutions that work for you and your family.
Thank you. There are some questions there in the chat. Can Sherry or Barb read out one of those questions, please?
Barb,
Well, go ahead, Sherry. Okay, well, they're searching back and going through the chat there to read out a question. There was one point that I just want to point out that Laura said during her presentation, is talking about reaching out to your family doctor, your healthcare provider. If there is anybody on this call, or if you know somebody that does not have a family physician, please remind them and encourage them to sign up to put their name on the list to be a part of one of the family care clinics or family care teams right across our province. If you do not have that number, or you're unsure on how to put your name on the list, reach out to Seniors NL. There is a number, and I actually have this number here, and I'm going to ask, I can put it in the chat now in the moment. But the number to call to register is 1-833-913-4679. If you'd like to register online for that, there is actually or I should say an email address there. Not an email address, there is a web address there. And if you need help to register online for that, you can certainly reach out to Seniors NL and we'll help you do that as well. So I'm going to place that number there in the chat. Or if I could ask, there you go. Thank you so much, Trudy. Already has it in there with the quick fingers. Thank you so much. So that number is in the chat. So that's a reminder, okay? Sherry, do you want to read out one of those questions, or Barb, that's in the chat?
There's one here from Maxine. Does anyone know of a service provider that's familiar with the link between ACE and autoimmune disorders?
Oh, I couldn't really hear that for some reason. It's really low.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. One moment, I'm looking for the question again. Just give me one moment there. I lost the question.
That's okay.
Does anyone know of service provider that is familiar with the link between ACE, ACE, and autoimmune disorders?
I only got, is anyone familiar with a service provider who?
Yeah, service provider that is familiar with the link between ACE, ACE, and autoimmune disorders.
Okay, so phenomenal question. We don't have the answer at this time. However, when I reply back to everybody with the link with the recorded, with this recorded session on YouTube, Laura will do some investigation and I'll have that answer in the reply back. How's that? Sherry, can you take that question down, please, and make sure that we do follow up and send that out to everybody on the call?
Will do.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question that they would like to ask Laura? Anything? I know there's another question there in the chat.
Sarlene has added Dr. Gabor Mate. I think that's how you say his name. He's written a lot about adverse childhood experiences, or the ACEs, about compassionate injury as well.
That was a Freudian slip. Compassionate injury. It's supposed to be compassionate inquiry. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was like, compassionate injury, what's that? And even about addiction, he's written a lot of books, that I've read a couple of them, even things about ADHD, so a lot about mental health, addiction, also trauma, right? And how, adverse childhood experiences, anything from the extremes of childhood abuse to even, the divorce of parents, can sometimes, lead to some negative consequences, including substance use, addiction, mental health problems for people, for children and adults as they grow up as well. So yeah, if you look up any of his books, there's a lot of interesting information if you're interested in learning more about those things. I can really have compassion and empathy for people who are struggling with mental health and addiction concerns, understanding kind of like the biological and the root cause of some of those things.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
It's not actually a question. My name is Mona. It's just to share something quickly. I've been doing some inquiries around seniors housing for seniors. And I've contacted several departments and advocacy organizations. With the advocacy, I'm often told we don't handle that. I go to NLHC, and I get program people telling me about what you can do now for housing. What I see that's missing is that there is no overall plan or vision for senior housing. We knew 40 years ago that we have an aging population. However, planning for that has fallen by the wayside in many ways. And I'm still struggling on how to engage people in this discussion. But there should be a plan, there should be a vision. The government, no matter what department, should be able to say, our vision for seniors living for the next 10 years will look like this, or should look like this. And we need to engage seniors in discussing how they want to live. And I'll just end by saying that I've had the opportunity to look at seniors housing in Norway and Sweden back in the 90s. And back in the 90s, they were 10 years ahead of where we are now. I'm thinking about thinking outside the box in terms of different ways of shared living arrangements other than segregating seniors in apartment buildings. And even if we wanted that type of housing, there's very little available. Anyway, it's something that I wish that we could do more about and say, I don't know what percentage of seniors we are in the province right now, but to be able to say, look, we're still human beings. We want to live in place. We want to live differently. We want to live comfortably. And what are the ways that we can approach that other than the standard way? So maybe for another agenda item, I don't expect Seniors NL to have a a presentation like you did today on it. I maybe just a forum where people could share their ideas about what they know about even housing in other parts of Canada, how that works, or what kind of financial supports there are. There was just an announcement on housing, a 5-point plan by the government, and I've been trying to find out how much of that will be accessible housing. And I don't just mean for people with physical disabilities, but seniors as well need accessible housing. And it's almost impossible to get an answer as to what the percentage is and why they set it at that percentage and not higher. So I'll end there. Sorry, I didn't mean to take too much time, but it's an issue that concerns me.
Thank you so much, Mona, for sharing that. And I did write that down. I did write down some of your points, concerns, and you never know, this may be another open session and in the future.
Catherine, we did get an answer back regarding ACEs and autoimmune. It was shared that Kathy shared that Dr. Nadine Burke Harris also has great TED Talk about ACEs. That's
Okay, thank you very much. I know there's some more comments actually coming into the chat. I'm going to ask Sherry and or Barb just to get another question ready. I will make a comment about Laura's presentation. Just a comment myself, personal comment, is that I think self-care when people are stressed is actually something that people overlook. And something that we overlook when we're stressed widely is about the self-care. Laura also spoke about bereavement. I just wanted to remind everybody that a few weeks ago, we did have a Zoom session on grief and bereavement. The session was recorded and it is on our YouTube channel for viewing. So I just wanted to put that out there as a reminder that the sessions are there and you can review the sessions as often and share and let people know that they are out there for viewing. Sherry, do you have another question ready?
that's it for now for what I see here. A lot of it's just very positive comments.
Perfect. Perfect. Anybody who'd like to take themselves off of mute and ask a question? Okay. While people are thinking, I'll actually just make another little comment, Laura. So thank you so much, because as you were talking, I was making so many notes as we were going along. You talked about exercising, and then exercising is not just physical, but it's mental as well, and it's about our brains. And I know that you did mention that as well. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate again, is that keeping our brains active is also such key factor that some of us forget about. So I mean, as you mentioned, Laura, you got the word games, the crosswords, Sudoku games, learning a new skill, memory games, reading. So, I mean, when we're talking about, we have members on here now from our public libraries. So, I mean, don't forget, our public libraries are out there right across the province, and they have so much to offer today that I think people overlook them. And I know that I'm going back to another session that we had, but our very first session that we started for our Just Ask, or Let's Talk About, I actually went screen too far, sorry about that. A Just Talk About session was with Newfoundland and Labrador public libraries. And I mean, some of the libraries have memory games. There's different other activities that you could go there to do for fitness that would involve the outside. So I would encourage everybody to follow up with your public libraries and see what they have to offer. I mean, they can even do group events. They can even have group events. So just throwing that out there. On the screen itself, we have some other resources that you see there. And a lot of these resources were mentioned in Laura's presentation. I have the Seniors NL contact information on the bottom. So if you do have questions, you do need information, again, that's what we are here for. Please don't hesitate to give us a call. We're coming to the end of our session. Is there anything else anybody would like to add? Any questions or comments?
There's lots of great comments and information in the chat. If you get a chance to read down, if folks want to get a chance to read down through there, like Trudy has mentioned about many towns across the province offering free or low cost exercise opportunities through town recreation or the 50+ federation clubs. other
Exactly.
regions. So for example, I know the town of Twillingate has a recreation program for seniors, and the guy who offers it, Chad, I think, I can't remember his full name, but he is just hilarious because I've met him and I've seen demonstrations or participated in some of his things. And yeah, so any folks in Twillingate, certainly check
And-
that out if you haven't already.
Absolutely. And again, Seniors NL, we have the 50+ clubs and different organizations to support activities right across the province. So just, again, give us a call, give us a call. We have
Catherine,
our
Catherine,
contact.
I'd just like to say thank you and Seniors NL for putting off these great presentations. They're just fabulous, and having them recorded so that people, if you're busy at the time, you can actually go hear them at another point. The only thing is you can't make comments or but if there's any questions, I know you guys would be quite happy to answer them for anybody who has any questions. So thank you so much. And I look forward to the New Year stuff. It's really sounds great.
I'm going to say stay tuned. I'm working on that. So we're going to be releasing a calendar with our upcoming Zoom meetings in December month, working with public libraries to help support and promote them. So I'm going to be actually listing them out for the first quarter for January, February, March. So stay tuned. So exciting. And I know, Starlin, you had, I believe, another question there. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I usually don't like to rush off quickly. However, we do have to end our session today. So I would like to say thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Laura, for this very engaging presentation. I know it gave me a lot of information, a lot of resources out there for people, things to think about. So I would like to say once again, thank you so much. Stay tuned for our session for next week and follow up emails from today's session. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
So thanks for having me.
You are very welcome.